Welcome to this explainer. If keeping up with all the massive macro-level news lately feels a bit like trying to drink from a fire hose, you are definitely not alone. It's a lot. So today, we're going to step in and act as your personal curator. We're cutting through all the noise of April 2026 and distilling those massive global and domestic signals into a clear, highly structured visual journey. We're zeroing in on just the core insights that absolutely matter to you.
To make sense of everything, we've organized our roadmap today into three main thematic pillars. First, we'll look at transforming governance and the economy. Then, India's changing role on the global stage. And finally, exploring the final frontiers of science.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, Transforming Governance and Economy. We're going to start by looking inward at some profound domestic shifts.
Okay, let's talk about the Jan Vishwas bill, because this is a real game changer. For decades, under what people famously called the Inspector Raj, making a minor procedural error, like literally just missing a filing deadline, actually carried the threat of jail time. Small business owners were essentially treated like criminals for simple paperwork mistakes. Well, this massive new reform changes the whole shebang. It completely decriminalizes those minor lapses across 79 different central acts, replacing jail time with simple monetary penalties. Now, why does this matter to us? Well, our courts are currently buried under a staggering 4.8 crore pending cases. By shifting from this mindset of a suspicious overseer to being a facilitator, the state is finally embracing trust-based governance, and that removes a massive, lingering hurdle for everyday entrepreneurs. So, while doing business at home is getting noticeably easier, our broader economy is feeling some serious heat from the outside. Specifically, we're looking at the current account deficit, or the CAD. Think of this like your household budget. It's simply the shortfall between what the country earns from its exports and what it spends on its imports. Right now, those escalating conflicts in the Middle East are driving global oil prices through the roof, and since we are a major oil importer, this hits us hard. Just to put this into perspective, a mere 1% increase in real oil prices can actually worsen India's CAD by up to 0.08 percentage points of our GDP. That is a massive financial swing.
And honestly, that global dynamic is exactly why the Indian rupee is facing such extreme volatility against the US dollar right now. You might be looking at India's incredibly robust 7.4% GDP growth and thinking, wait, why on earth is our currency hitting record lows? Well, it all comes down to external shocks. When global uncertainty spikes, foreign investors get jittery and pull their money into safe havens. This flighty capital suddenly leaving weakens the rupee. And what happens next? A weaker rupee makes all of our oil and electronics imports way more expensive, which drives up our domestic inflation. The real long-term fix here isn't just the Reserve Bank of India stepping in to intervene, it's shifting our reliance to stable, greenfield foreign direct investment. That means attracting money that comes in to physically build brand new factories and businesses from the ground up, rather than just hot money trading stocks back and forth.
To really understand our actual financial resilience against all these global headwinds, we need to contrast sovereign debt with private debt. Think of sovereign debt as the anchor of stability. It's that stable, long-term funding for massive public infrastructure projects, like the bullet train, that private markets just won't touch. Private debt, on the flip side, acts as a much more volatile but absolutely essential growth engine for our commercial sector.
Now, the big takeaway here is that private debt actually makes up the lion's share of our total external debt, sitting at 79%. And you know what? That actually reflects a really healthy private sector-led model for growth. But there is a catch right now. Because the rupee is depreciating, borrowing money internationally in foreign currency is getting incredibly expensive. Because of that currency trap, external commercial borrowings, which are the loans our Indian companies take from foreign lenders, literally dropped by 25% this fiscal year. So companies are cleverly pivoting toward domestic borrowing instead. And hey, if you're ever worried about national financial stability, just look at our ultimate shock absorber. Our Forex reserves are sitting right near $701 billion US. That covers roughly 94% of all our external debt, and our total debt to GDP ratio sits at a very comfortable 19.1%. And check this out. Despite all those global financial headwinds we just talked about, our domestic infrastructure is literally shifting into high gear. Indian major ports handled an absolutely record-breaking 915.17 million tons of cargo this fiscal year. Even better, average turnaround times have been slashed from 96 hours a decade ago down to just 49.5 hours today. What's cementing all this amazing efficiency is the new Indian Ports Act of 2025. It finally replaced the old 1908 Ports Act. Let that sink in for a second. Until very recently, we were governing massive modern megaships with a law written before the Titanic was even built.
Let's move on to our second pillar, India on the global stage. We're going to see how all this domestic economic strength translates into confident diplomacy abroad.
A fantastic example of this is the historic April 2026 free trade agreement signed between India and New Zealand right in New Delhi. This represents a massive, decade-long strategic shift. We are moving way beyond a relationship defined by just shared history and a mutual love of cricket, straight into some deep geopolitics and serious trade. The biggest thing you should take away from this is the incredible living bridge it creates for education. The pact introduces joint degree programs between Indian and New Zealand universities, it completely removes numerical caps on Indian student visas, and it extends post-study work visas up to 3 years for master's students and 4 years for PhDs. Plus, it locks in a specific quota for 5,000 skilled Indian professionals.
Shifting our focus to the Middle East, we really need to pause and ask a massive geopolitical question regarding our national energy security. Why does it matter so much to India when the UAE, which is our third largest trading partner, decides to up and leave a major oil cartel like OPEC?
Well, the implications for us are huge. A cartel like OPEC functions basically by restricting the global oil supply to keep prices artificially high. So, the UAE stepping out signals that they are ready to pump a lot more oil entirely on their own terms. For India, a country that imports roughly 85% of its crude oil, a fractured OPEC means softer global prices. Even more importantly, it lets us negotiate direct, long-term supply contracts with the UAE without any interference from OPEC. Remember earlier when we talked about how a $10 oil price hike widens our national deficit? Securing closer, cheaper oil gives our strategic petroleum reserves some incredible, much-needed leverage.
Expanding our diplomatic view past just bilateral trade, the recent visit to New Delhi by the UN General Assembly President really highlights India's urgent, aggressive push for immediate Security Council reforms. And the core argument here is actually pretty simple. The current 1945-era setup is totally outdated. India is outright warning the world that if the UN doesn't modernize right now, nations are going to abandon it and turn to alternative, fragmented global clubs where diplomacy is essentially pay-to-play, meaning it's accessible only to the wealthiest nations. India is firmly demanding a permanent seat at the main table to ensure that true universal representation actually survives into the future. For our third and final pillar, we are going to leave Earth's politics entirely behind and explore how India and the world are pushing the absolute extremes of scientific exploration.
Looking up at the path to the moon, the Artemis 2 mission from April 2026 is an absolute milestone. It is the very first crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit since way back in 1972, serving as the ultimate high-stakes flight test for the Space Launch System and the Orion capsule. But the really crucial context here is India's role in this brand new era of space exploration. By signing the Artemis Accords, which is a peaceful exploration framework involving over 60 nations, India isn't just sitting on the sidelines watching. We are actively providing vital scientific payloads for lunar surface studies, leaning heavily on the proven legacy of our own Chandrayaan missions.
It's incredibly fascinating to contrast this drive to look way up into the macrocosmos against our drive to look deep down into the micro-abyss. Because under the Deep Ocean mission, India has developed the Matsya 6000. So right while international astronauts are heading out to lunar orbit, India's very first indigenous manned submersible is prepping to carry 3 humans, a staggering 6,000 meters straight down underwater. Whether we are facing the total vacuum of deep space or the absolutely crushing pressure of the deep ocean floor, the pursuit of sovereign technological capability requires the exact same level of engineering resilience.
As we wrap up this explainer, we want to leave you with one final, provocative thought. We've just seen how dismantling the Inspector Raj, buffering our economy against crazy global oil shocks, demanding a rightful seat at the UN cable, and literally launching human beings into the deep ocean and deep space are definitely not isolated events. They are deeply interconnected pillars of growth. So, considering all of this, how will these exact macro developments of April 2026 position India for the rest of the decade? Will this new trust-based governance finally unleash the MSME sector like we hope? Will our energy diplomacy secure our ongoing growth? We hope the insights we've covered today give you the clarity you need to ponder those exact questions. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we will see you in the next explainer.